Hi, everybody. My name is Becca. I am a board member for Drupal for Gov, which is putting on this wonderful conference for you, / Drupal Camp. The keynote is sponsored by Pantheon, so I just want to make sure I mention that. I'm here to introduce Brian Hersh. I met him back in Austin when he was working for the White House and presenting on some awesome live stream functionality that he had created for the White House in Drupal 7. Since then, I've roped him into doing many things, both Gov Summit as well as other things here at Drupal GovCon. And if it hasn't been me, it's been somebody else on the GovCon team. He's working at mass.gov now and doing amazing things up north. He is the most passionate and enthusiastic person you will meet about Drupal and many other topics, I'm sure, but I mostly, talk to him about Drupal stuff. He's always willing to help. He's a generally amazing individual, and I just am so pleased to introduce you to Brian today. So here he is.
Hi, my name is Brian Hersh. I'm the product owner for the new mass.gov. Our work in progress is live at pilot.mass.gov, and our Drupal 8 website will be the new mass.gov coming this fall. I work for Massachusetts Digital Services. Our mission is to make people's interactions with state government simple, fast, meaningful, and wicked awesome. My first job out of college, I was a grassroots organizer. For my first assignment, I was sent to Chicago. I didn't know anyone, but I had a stack of postcards and a stack of volunteer cards. My plan was to stand on a sidewalk and ask people to sign my postcards, encouraging a big company to do business differently. If they signed my postcards, I would ask them to sign a volunteer card. For every 3 postcards, I would get 1 volunteer card. I had to collect 960 postcards to get 320 volunteer cards. And after that, I just followed the rule of halves. If I have 320 phone numbers, I'll only reach half. Of those, half will agree to my kickoff event. Half of the people who say yes will show up. And so if I've remembered the numbers correctly, that's how I got 40 people to show up to my kickoff event. And then 7 months later, the business we were sending postcards to agreed to invest $32 million to change their business practices. Then I moved to Boston to work for an advocacy group. Now I was the person drafting and testing postcards. We would try them out on the streets in Boston until we achieved a reasonable signature rate. And then we would give stacks of these to all of our organizers. I remember when Google acquired Urchin in 2005 and then made web analytics available to the masses without a paid subscription. I remember trying to convince my webmaster, which was not me at the time, that all of a sudden the kinds of tests that we had been doing on the street corners could be done online with our digital communications too. She didn't buy it. I'm telling you this story for 3 reasons. First, because I believe in numbers. You can't manage what you can't measure. Second, because I believe 2005 is the year when the chasm opened between public sector websites and our private sector counterparts. Third, because the conversations that I was having with people in 2005 about what Google Analytics is and what we can do with it are too similar to the conversations that I'm having today with people in government. We're behind. We need to catch up. 76% of constituents interact with the state of government, the state of Massachusetts, online. That's way more than any other medium, by phone, in person, by email. But user satisfaction is low. On the right, McKinsey gives mass.gov a user satisfaction score, or found a user satisfaction score from their study of 32. That's 25% lower than Texas, which was the best-ranked state at the time they did this study. But Texas isn't our competition. It's the private sector websites that our constituents are interacting with that set their expectations for what it should be like to interact online in 2017. This is a huge gap. If money alone could close this gap, if it were just about buying the best content management system or hiring the best design firm, or making your website responsive, there's no way the difference in user satisfaction ratings would be this big. Public sector, not just mass.gov, the best public sector websites are overwhelmingly missing something else. I believe the thing that we've been missing is actionable analytics. How many people have seen this website? Analytics.usa.gov. So this shows Google Analytics across federal government websites, and a number of cities and states have forked this and reused this to summarize and visualize their web statistics. The thing that's awesome about this project is that it's made the public sector self-aware about being behind if you don't have something like Google Analytics or some equivalent to capture web statistics about your website, or if you don't have any sense about how to measure desired outcomes. But what's humbling about this is that we're just starting this conversation now. This is information that our private sector counterparts have been studying since 2005. The best of them, the standard bearers, have done really amazing things with it. I believe we can close this gap. Massachusetts is definitely trying. The theme of my talk today is making mass.gov constituent-centric and data-driven. These are our two main strategies for catching up and keeping up. I hope it works. Let's start with constituent-centric. This is basically our government take on human-centered design. Here's a slide from a presentation that one of our user experience experts, one of our user experience designers and researchers made, and I think this captures what constituent-centric design is really about. It visualizes emotion as an area chart, emotion over time as an area chart. The y-axis is emotion, high is smiley, low is frowny. The x-axis is time, mapped to a single person's journey through one of our human service providers' benefits programs. The constituent's journey starts at a low point. On the left, this person is struggling financially. When a constituent learns about the government service, in this case, it's subsidies for childcare, she feels a boost. She calls, she schedules an appointment. Then there's another dive when she realizes she missed her appointment. She reschedules, there are delays, and now the whole thing feels frustrating. We ran a pilot project that sent text message reminders the day before an appointment, including links to forms and documentation that people should bring with them. So the experience we were trying to design for is this, a more consistent, more positive experience. And the result was fewer missed appointments, faster processing because more people showed up with the right paperwork the first time. And as you can see here, the emotional experience of the constituent is dramatically better. Constituent-centered design is about creating experiences with outcomes like these rather than the emotional roller coaster that you saw visualized on the previous slide. It's about designing to maximize smiley faces and minimize frowny faces. Has anyone ever heard of the Net Promoter Score? Show of hands, I'm curious. So user experience designers are really into this. It boils user experience down to a single rating based on people's answer to the following question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend? Where this question fits, it's extremely helpful. But think about some of our use cases. Would you recommend filing for unemployment benefits to a friend? You go to court, would you recommend getting a divorce to a friend? Here's a quote from our design director, Harlan Weber. This is our compass in place of the Net Promoter Score. The emotion we're aiming for is confidence. Here's a survey of our current landscape. Many of the problems that you see fit into two buckets. The first bucket, there are a lot of unhappy faces. Here's a quiz. If you want a driver's license in Massachusetts, where do you go? Does anybody know? DMV. In Massachusetts, we call it the RMV. We're the only state. But massrmv.com. If you want to be an approved Uber or Lyft driver, where do you think you go? Come on, anyone? Energy and Environmental Affairs, mass.gov/EEA. This feels confusing. Today, it's easier than ever to understand the process of getting a child support order. I personally tested this content out. I've read the instructions several times. I know now that I can apply and get some help with the process through the Department of Revenue or by myself if I go through the courts. I understand the two processes, but I feel paralyzed when I try to decide which one I would choose. I can't tell. I can't tell how to tell. I ask myself, for a real person in distress after a rocky divorce, in financial straits, how would they feel at this fork in the road? Not confident. What if I lose my job and I want to talk to someone about filing for unemployment benefits? Before picking up the phone, I'm instructed to review this table. It tells me a time and day that I can call based on the last digit of my social security number. Ugh, right? So recently, a link went up on the bottom of this. It says that now I can schedule to have a callback to my number. This feels like a step in the right direction, but when I click the link, I get sent to the legacy website, and I still can't figure out how to actually schedule to get a callback. I've tried twice. I feel confused, and I'm not in a tough spot. How's this going to feel to someone who urgently needs help? Not good. I wish I could tell you that these 3 examples were the only 3 examples, but there are more. Problem number 2, unnecessary boundaries create unnecessary friction and frustration. To register a new business in the state of Massachusetts, in addition to registering with the federal government, the IRS, I have to register with 3 different state agencies who have 3 different websites: the Secretary of the Commonwealth, the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Unemployment Assistance. If I'm looking for tuition assistance, I have to find my way to and through 7 different state websites to find out all of the different options. This feels unnecessarily complicated. Online, the boundaries have changed. I don't have to go to different websites to buy different kinds of books, even if in the physical world they still come from different bookstores. I can get anything I want from Amazon.com, and Amazon does, in fact, I know from this screen I'm showing you, get my books from different physical bookstores, but I don't have to go to different websites. The physical boundaries that exist between different physical bookstores don't have to be surfaced and visualized on the internet. It's unnecessary complexity. Starting a business should be the same. I just want a checklist. I just want to know, have I completed all the steps? What else do I have to do? Being constituent-centric means designing for what constituents need. There doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship between government organizations and websites. Here's a screenshot of the pilot website for mass.gov in 2001. It says, "Portal power to the people." Google defines a portal as an internet site that provides access or links to other sites. Today, 16 years later, I don't know if you can see the address bar at the top of this screenshot, our homepage redirects to mass.gov/portal. All of our authors are members of a group called the PUG, which stands for Portal User Group. Portals were a great experiment when the internet was new and we weren't really sure what to do with it. But now they're a relic. At its essence, Portal is the opposite of constituent-centric. It's government-centric. Portals are about recreating physical boundaries and organizational boundaries on the internet, even when the boundaries create friction and confusion for our constituents. It's about what government organizations do. It's not about what constituents need. We have 300 portal websites on mass.gov, and then off of the mass.gov domain, there are another 300 plus websites. So that's what it looks like to be behind. That's what it feels like to be behind. Now let's see what catching up looks like. Solution number 1, redraw the boundaries. Remove big structural obstacles. Wouldn't it be easier for the constituent if all the information they need about a single service lived in one place? This is a type of page that we call a service page. On the right, this is basically a repeatable template for pulling together all the different types of information that is relevant to a service, even when it cuts across different state agencies or different branches of government. to give constituents all of the things that they need about that service, whether they're registering a business, finding tuition assistance, or anything else. Here's the design for a basic service page. Soon, we can have pages like this for starting a business, for finding tuition assistance. So this should be an improvement, right? But it only matters if people can find it. So how does the constituent actually find their way here if we don't have organizational websites? To make the whole experience fast and easy, we need to meet them wherever they're coming from. 70% of our users come in through Google. The other 30% start at the homepage and navigate. Let's start with Google. To improve constituents' experience, we're following specifications published by Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft on a website called schema.org. The specifications for metadata there help search engines like Google, as well as other social media sites like Facebook and Twitter, intelligently reuse content from our website on their applications. So that sounds awesome, right? So here's the catch. To do this, we have to actually change the way that our authors write their content. Today, in our legacy CMS, everything is a page. All the meaningful content is mushed together in a single body field, a big unstructured body field. In the new CMS, there is no body field. Everything is broken up into chunks: phone numbers, hours, addresses. All the things that you see here need to be stored and managed separately as atomic units. It's also worth noting that reorganizing the content this way is really important for other things too. It's really important to responsive design if we're going to change the way the content looks and behaves on different screen sizes. It's also really important for being able to make updates that you make in one place that appear in many different places. So for constituents, highly structured data is really high value. It unlocks so much value. But for our authors, writing content this way can be a really big change and can be really challenging. And in the end, this is only going to work if we can produce content this way at scale. We anticipate having between 150 and 250 active writers in our system. So we need to get a critical mass of those people to make this change in mindset, moving away from thinking about creating pages and toward creating reusable chunks of content. It was a breakthrough when we realized we need to explicitly address this shift in mindset with our authors. In the short term, we're doing this through education. We've got a 90-second video, which we show at our trainings, and I'm just going to go ahead and show it to you guys right now. Only 90 seconds. So in addition to showing this at training sessions, we're incorporating video, help, and training content like the video you just saw into a self-help library directly into the back end of the CMS. So in this design, you see a self-help video like the one you just saw being incorporated into the authoring experience alongside the author's content entry form. In the longer term, structured content is at the center of our vision for improving the authoring experience. We haven't decided if we're actually going to implement the design that you're seeing right here yet, but this is a design idea we've kicked around, and we're bringing this visual design to the Decoupled Developer Summit in New York City later this month to talk to people about it. The basic idea is to provide a live preview next to the node edit form with enough context on how the different chunks of content fit together so that the author can have an easy time writing, even if they don't know all of the different ways that their content might get used and reused in different websites and apps. We're exploring whether this might be a lighter lift and a more maintainable solution than in-place editing on the front end, especially if once we start using our new pattern lab-based atomic design system in non-Drupal applications in the future. So if we go this route, bringing it back to Google, potentially one of the live preview displays that you could see on the right is something like this that shows you the structured schema.org metadata that is what Google sees and uses, and then actually uses to populate the knowledge graph that you saw a few slides ago. So this is actually a screenshot that I took from the structured data checker tool that Google provides. For 30% of our constituents who don't come in through Google and instead start at the home page and then navigate, here's how we're planning to improve their experience. The overwhelming majority of users travel through one of 20 different groups of pages. We call these groupings our top topics. So we've organized the site's navigation around what we call topic pages. The top topics are all featured prominently in the site's main navigation bar. A topic page looks like this. Below the image, you've got cards. The cards represent service pages. And structurally, the content fits together this way. The topic page has all these service cards. I can click a service card, for example, start a business, and then the service page has smaller cards, which link off to different steps that I might need for things like register this, update that, apply, download materials, find a location near you, etc. Even if all those different interactions take place with different government organizations. The last stop on the constituent's journey is an endpoint. This is where a transaction happens, where a task gets completed, where a sought-after piece of information is found, or where a service gets delivered. Great. So we've redrawn the boundaries. We've removed big structural obstacles that create unnecessary friction and complexity for users. This brings us to solution number 2. Observe their activities and iterate. Here's how we've gone about soliciting different types of feedback and evolving from a proof of concept to something that's more polished. AIGA, the American Institute for Graphic Artists, hosted a public design critique where they, first their panel of experts and then the 100 participants participated in actually critiquing our new design. Their audience included brand designers, graphic designers, user experience designers. We got a lot of really helpful, candid feedback. And if you've noticed that there's no logo on pilot.mass.gov, it's because we've taken their feedback to heart and we're still working on it. We used a tool called TreeJack to test if we've actually made the website easier to navigate with this topic-based navigation. Many of our results were positive. Here's an example of one where we have room for improvement. This test asked users questions like, you're thinking of moving to Massachusetts with your family, including your 2 children ages 7 and 12. Where would you go to find information on schools? The pie graph at the bottom left visualizes the different paths that people took. We put school information under a top-level menu item called Learning, but nearly half of the people who took the test went to Living instead, and then they got lost. So happily, we learned this in December. That gives us lots of time to adjust and improve, leading up to going live later in the year. We partnered with the Perkins School for the Blind to test for meaningful accessibility above just basic ADA compliance, Americans with Disability Act compliance. Here you see a user interacting with a page that is WCAG 2.0 compliant. That's the latest standard for ADA. Blind users, using keyboards to navigate with screen readers instead of touch screens or mice, had a pretty positive experience. Drupal 8 gives our developers much easier control over the tab order when they're navigating by keyboard, and the Drupal Announce API makes it really easy for us to provide audio cues when something is changing on the screen, like search results appearing or changing. What you see here, though, is an example of an issue that a compliance rating cannot tell you. This is a user with low vision who navigates zoomed way in, and she's consistently missing critical information in the right sidebar. She just never makes it from the main content area over to the right side of the page. For product testing by sighted users, we use a tool called Validately. Validately is a good fit for us because it helps us recruit test users and enables us to specify a demographically diverse group that is representative among our testers. We use this to test pages when users get to their destination, and we wanted to know, is it actually easy, fast, and intuitive to do things like change my address, or start an application, or respond to a summons? Some of the interactions were confusing both for sighted and low sight users, and that helped us zero in on high-value page layout improvements. For example, the placement of this quick actions link that has callouts that used to be in the right sidebar of our how-to pages. Here you see the evolution of the how-to page's parent page. We used to call these subtopic pages. They were basically just groupings of topically related transactional interactions. And we've reinvented this as something that is hopefully a lot more usable and meaningful for users, which we call service pages. Here you see related updates to the parent of the service page, the topic page. Hopefully now these are going to be better at giving constituents the information that they're looking for so they can zero in on the service more quickly and more easily. This is one of 3 new tools that we're building into the platform and using this summer. This one is called Chalkmark. With Chalkmark, UX designers and visual designers can give users tasks to complete. Then colors and statistics overlays tell us how the users interacted with those designs. And we can do all of this before anyone writes any code. So it's a lot faster and cheaper to do these kinds of tests. And we've been using this to test out possible page layouts and designs for the new search page and search experiences. We're also using a tool called Crazy Egg. This gives us insights into where people click and where they scroll to and past. So here you see heat maps depicting scrolling on our homepage and on our driver's license page. Everyone is seeing the quick links on the driver's license page. Not everybody makes it to the bottom. Crazy Egg also gives us these confetti visualizations, so we can see click behavior by segment. So maybe you think it's easy for people to figure out how to sign up for one of those unemployment claims callbacks, and I think it's confusing. How do we know who's right? Now we can just see, what do the users find easy to use? Where are they clicking? We can also see if people who come from certain search terms or certain Google campaigns behave differently than other users. So for example, let's say there's an application deadline, and I send an email out to my list. I can filter this visualization to just show me the click behavior that was generated by people who clicked the link in my email. Or let's say I want to do a fast, easy A/B test. I send out 2 different links to 2 small sample sets. I see where people click around, and then I decide what link to use before I send the mass email. Last but not least, we're assembling a volunteer panel. So we've got a demographically representative test group. This is a group that we want to be able to send test exercises to. If you can see the print on the screen, we put a sign-up form on the website, and we got a good number of responses, but demographically, all of the people, or almost all the people on this list, are basically in the same income and demographic groups and not representative of the state of Massachusetts. So we're recruiting so that our testers are more representative. I'm actually going to skip this next section just for time's sake. So I'll just say one quick thing about this. Our authors are people with emotions too. And they have been hearing the way that we talk about this and think about this. And I think a lot of the people who've worked hard at making their portal websites as great as they can and thoughtful and with valuable content worry and wonder about where all that content they've worked so hard on could live in the the new universe. So I'll show one slide from this section. We've done an audit of all of the different portal, or many of the different portal websites. What you see outlined here is basically a superset of all of the different kinds of content that are included in the portal websites. All of these kinds of content have homes in the new CMS that we're building. It's just reorganized. So I'm not going to walk you through where it all maps to, but just wanted to say it because I know the question is out there, and I wish we had done a better job speaking to that earlier on, because I think it created some friction for people. So let's talk about being data-driven. Achieving delightful constituent experiences requires iterating, tuning, tweaking, but we don't have infinite resources. We can't tweak and tune endlessly everywhere in the pursuit of more and more smiley faces. Mastering our data will enable us to align our interest in being constituent-centric with priorities and desired outcomes. It creates space for iteration in the places where we can have the highest impact, and in places where we really can't afford not to iterate until we get it right. Let's start with a clear idea of what data-driven means, and then I'll show you how our current approach is falling short and how our new approach will hopefully position us to catch up and keep up. Conceptually, this is what data-driven looks like. Reporting translates raw data into information. Analysis transforms the data and information in the reports to insights and actionable recommendations. Analysis only delivers value when it's acted upon. If I fork the code base powering analytics.usa.gov, it gets me some reporting. It's a start. It builds awesome awareness and participation. But to get to data-driven, we need to be able to take these next 3 steps too. Here's our current state. Problem number 1, legacy mass.gov doesn't have clear priorities, doesn't have an explicit target audience, doesn't have a clear purpose. It's a portal. It lets the agencies decide. It does everything. So as a result, it doesn't do anything especially well. This is one of those places where deciding what you don't do is as important as deciding what you do. To be clear, there are some gems in our legacy CMS, but finding them can be like finding treasure in a bazaar. The bottom line is that with 250,000 unique pieces of content, if we treat everything equally, we'll never be great at optimizing anything. Problem number 2, even though Google trades us cool analytics reports in exchange for our data without charging us money, the barriers to producing actionable analyses are still pretty high. Here's the Google Analytics homepage. How many people here use Google Analytics on their website? Lots of hands. So there's helpful information here. Knowing how many people have ever visited a page, or if anyone has ever visited a page, can be invaluable. But if I want to know, how does my content work? Does my content work? Does it produce the desired outcomes? There's a lot more to it still. If I want to know if my content works, to get from Google Analytics out of the box to actionable recommendations, I need someone who understands both Google Analytics and the actual content well enough to generate meaningful reports. I need someone who has a clear enough vision of the content strategy, the purpose of the content, to analyze those reports and provide actionable recommendations, if we're trying to lower call volume or increase speed of service delivery, or if we're reaching our target demographics. And then we need someone who has the ability to take action. If you've tried this, you know that it takes a lot of work. If you haven't tried this, it's probably because it takes a lot of work. The next part is the part that feels the most unknown. We're very much in the early stages of making data-driven part of our culture at Mass IT. And we know we're going to learn a lot once we actually get these tools in the hands of content authors and start harvesting data from real user interactions. But our basic plan is, number 1, to set clear priorities for mass.gov as a product. And number 2, to lower the barriers to entry by baking much of our content strategy, our performance indicators, and our analysis right into the content types in Drupal, in the administrative interface. So here's what that looks like. On prioritization, Our leadership has given us two really helpful mandates. First, follow the 80-20 rule. In economics, this is called the Pareto principle. The basic idea is that 20% of our web content probably generates 80% or more of the value. Early on in the project, they told us to go study our data and figure out what the top 20 is. We were skeptical, but here's what our data scientists figured out. 10% of our content serves 89% of our page requests. They also looked at the different paths that people travel through the website using Google Analytics data, and each of these paths aligns with one of 20 clusters, and the clusters map to 20 categories of government services or content topics. This is how we figured out what the 20 top topics are. So now we have data helping us understand what the top is. Second, our leadership narrowed the scope of mass.gov's purpose and identified a clearer target audience. Mass.gov, the Commonwealth's flagship digital property, is constituent-centric. It should be about getting people and businesses the information they need quickly and easily without confusion. Its purpose is to serve constituents. If there is information for government employees about procurement procedures, HR policies, services that one government organization provides to another government organization that is distracting constituents on the way to the information that they need to get services, then that information doesn't belong on mass.gov. And if there's information that nobody ever looks at, that doesn't belong on mass.gov either. There's no authoritative list of government services for us to draw from today, but studying the top 20 topics, we've identified 61 top services made up of 705 discrete tasks. This adds up to 766 pages of top priority content. The top 10% of pages have significant overlap with these top services. The further we get, the clearer the Venn diagram becomes, but we think it looks something like this. The tippy top of our 80-20 pyramid is at the center of the Venn diagram. That's where we're going to have the biggest impact by making the smallest number of changes. That's where we get the biggest return on our investment when we iterate until we really get it right. This is where it's the most important to have a clear vision of what outcome our content is meant to achieve. This is where reports should indicate when our website is or isn't producing the desired results. And this is where our analysis should guide us to the lowest cost, highest impact opportunities for improvement. Now, with this level of focus, we can have a productive conversation about lowering the barriers to analysis. We can talk about providing people with tools that will put more meaningful analysis within reach for government content authors. Marketers in the private sector have been honing this craft for over a decade. But in the public sector, we've been slow to adopt the same outcomes-oriented analytical tools and mindset. Let's see how private sector marketers think about this and talk about this, and then let's look at the possible opportunities to pre-process information for our government users, since most of them will never have marketing teams to figure this all out for them. Marketers for private sector websites think about everything as a path to a funnel to a conversion. Once they're in the funnel, our goal is to get the user to convert from being a visitor to a paying customer. How many people in this room have used Amazon.com? So when you put something in your shopping cart, when you're looking for something to put in your shopping cart, before you pick something, you're on a path. When you put something in your shopping cart, now you're in a funnel. And then when you check out, you convert from being a visitor to a paying customer or a returning customer. Websites that are not shopping carts have embraced this paradigm too. Now we think of conversions as any event that can be triggered in a browser to indicate that a web application has fulfilled its purpose. A form gets submitted, a link gets clicked, a file gets downloaded. If it's information as a service, the information has been consumed. Online marketers have a whole vocabulary for talking about this. Return on investment can be measured in terms of conversions. Clicks that move people through a funnel are good clicks. Clicks that bounce someone out of a funnel are bad clicks. They're a distraction to our desired outcome. With traditional advertising, when I bought an ad, I was buying impressions. With online advertising, I want to buy clicks that move people to or through a funnel. To close this gap, we need the same mindset. We need to define and measure desired outcomes for our web content. All of our content is about getting constituents to some destination, to some endpoint, where a service is delivered and a conversion gets tracked. We need to rethink all of our web content as paths to funnels to conversions. Here's how that works on the new mass.gov. Broad topics lead to narrower topics, which lead to service pages, which lead to endpoints. The endpoint is where the service gets delivered and a conversion gets tracked. Today we have 7 content types, which can be used as endpoints. These are the 7 types of pages where a service gets delivered, a need gets fulfilled, or we've taken the user as far as we can in their online journey. We call these how-tos, events, service details, guides, locations, location details, and location listings. So far, we've identified 5 different types of endpoints. Simple online transactions can be completed entirely online without logging into anything. Successful journeys end in a form being submitted or material being downloaded. For example, I submit a request to reserve a soccer field. A path to a funnel is mass.gov providing the easiest, fastest path for a user to find some application that lives off of mass.gov. We walk the constituent right up to the doorstep of some transactional application that they're going to need to log into, and then we hand them off there. A contact someone page results in contacting someone. On a contact someone page, clicking a phone number on a mobile device or sending an email indicates success, in contrast to other kinds of endpoints where those interactions might be the opposite of success. So if a simple online transaction is aiming to provide a self-service experience, you're probably not looking for calls into call centers. Here you are. On an information as a service page, the information being consumed is the service. For example, we, Massachusetts, is a provider, a primary source of information about unemployment statistics and jobs in the state every month. Find a pages help constituents find a place, find a grant, etc. Every time an author posts one of the content types listed on the bottom here, he or she will be prompted to select one of the endpoints at the top, one of the endpoint descriptions at the top, from a select list. Now, we will have a stated purpose for all the content on the website. Now, it's simple to have a conversation about whether some piece of content works or not. Now that we know all of this, we know the reports that the authors or the agency leadership need to be able to tell whether their content performs or not. We can show them comparisons to other high-performing content. We can be methodical about keeping what works and then iterating on the places where outcomes are suboptimal. We can give dynamic reports that spoon-feed information to them that dramatically lowers the barriers to performing analysis and then taking action. We have 3 main audiences for these dashboards: authors who mostly draft endpoints, editors who review and approve draft content, and agency leadership who are interested in the outcomes and sometimes review content, but mostly don't do the day-to-day content management. Our goal this summer is to deliver one usable, actionable dashboard to test users in each of these groups: authors, editors, and agency leadership, and then revise as necessary until someone in each of those groups gets some useful, actionable information out of the dashboard that we've provided to them. Once we have a successful example in the wild with real mass.gov owners, we'll build the rest of the dashboards. For authors, we'll build out one of the endpoint dashboards. For editors, we're going to build out a dashboard to be incorporated into service pages that reports on performance of the service based on the performance of all of its children. For agency leadership, we're building our first dashboard to be incorporated into topic pages. So that reports on performance of all of its children, topically related services, or for the higher level topic pages, performance across topics. Once we have a repeatable, successful recipe if we build a dashboard for each type of endpoint, topics, services, and a generic default that could be used for anything else, that's 8 dashboards that we're aiming to have when we're live, around the time that we're live this fall. Now imagine this. I'm a member of some agency's leadership. I want to know one page that works really, really well, and one page that gets a high volume of traffic but doesn't perform well. I ask my editor to pull together these 2 examples and call a meeting with our authors. In under an hour, our editor will be able to find exactly what they were just asked for. And then in a 1-hour meeting, we'll be able to drill into performance reports, interpret the information, and decide on a few actionable steps that we can take to tune the underperforming content. If we get this right, we're going to be able to do all of that in an hour. If each editor held a meeting like that once a week or once a month, think about the impact that will have on our content. So we know that there are lots of things that we don't know about how this is all going to actually work once it's out in the wild. Here's a humbling example that we know from the city of Boston. Most people assume that when you get self-service right, the general effect will be that we'll offload calls to the call centers, right? Self-service goes up, calls to the call centers goes down, and that's actually something that we're really, really excited about. So this fall, we're just working with analytics on mass.gov, but in the near future, we're going to be instrumenting the transactional applications, the actual funnels that people log into with Google Analytics, so we can see the full online path to the funnel to the end. And then the tools that we're using let us incorporate the offline statistics too, so we could bring information, real statistics from the call centers right into these dashboards, and we'll be able to see right there, does the call volume go down when self-service goes up? So the experience of Boston has been that when they rolled out really effective self-service tools through their 311 program, the calls to the call center actually went way up. So what actually happened was that they were building trust with so many people who never would have thought to call the city before about all of this information. And as a result, all these people who now have this trusting relationship think of the city as a go-to source of information for all of these things that they didn't think about before. And so now they're calling in higher volumes. So we know that things like this will happen, but we know we need to learn these sorts of things to really figure this out and get it right. I'm also just going to show, I feel like the dashboard looks so much cooler when you see a real one. So this is a real superset dashboard that we use to build the prototype, and that's working. This is embedded in Drupal and coming out in our next release. And can be filtered down to a specific node ID the way you see here. So all of this is being done with a data visualization tool called Superset. It's an open source project by Airbnb. Now it's an Apache project. And it's being incorporated directly into the administrative interface the way that you see on this screen. So 2 last slides. I know that we're short on time. I just want to get to 2 more quick things. One is that people always ask about the bottom 80% of the pyramid. It was really empowering to hear from our stakeholders early on that we don't have to solve for every single kind of content, for every single use case that ever exists in the world. It was helpful to focus and figure out what we really need. But now that we've figured things out, we actually do believe that we have a home for all of the content worth keeping from the portal websites. So I just wanted to say that because the question comes up a lot. The second thing I just want to be sure to say is that this is all open source. We know that we're not the only people trying to figure these problems out. We would love to have people in this sandbox with us working to solve these really critical problems. So OpenMass is our Drupal code base. It's up on GitHub. Mayflower is our Pattern Lab-based atomic design system. And I'm just realizing conspicuously absent here, the ETLs that are slurping the data in from Google Tag Manager and pumping them into Superset. It was not omitted intentionally. We'll get that all up online. We're happy to share those too. So if anyone wants to stick around for questions, I'd be happy to stick around and talk. And thank you so much for having me to talk today.